record. All right, so welcome to today's webinar, Introduction to Great Health, to Gut Health, why great health begins in the gut. And as you can probably guess from my logo and my brand, gut health is something that I'm really passionate about. And what I'm going to take you through today are some of the common symptoms and signs, and also some things that you can do about it starting today. So there will be a little bit of quiz we'll go through, and it will be useful because you'll be able to do some self-reflection. So what I'll say is today does not replace one-on-one advice, because I don't know all of your family and health history. So what I say today shouldn't be taken as health or medical advice. You do need that relationship with a practitioner. If you haven't been following me, then you might find value in some of my other videos. So my YouTube channel is slowly growing. On there, I do have other videos on bloating, on IBS, on SIBO, on detoxing. I also talk through some of the functional testing that I run, the GI map, which is a gut test, a metabolic test called OMNEX, the HTMA, which is hair testing. I'm going to put one up in the next couple of months around genetic testing. And there's lots of amazing client testimonials. So if you want to hear from other people about the benefits of doing work on your gut, then definitely hop on over to there where you can learn more. A little bit about me, if you're new to my world, welcome. So I'm a university qualified functional medicine nutritionist. So I've got this really passion for gut health, epigenetics, which is really the study of our genes and how the environment impacts them. Nutrigenomics, which again is the study of our genes and how nutrition impacts them. And autoimmune conditions, particularly, I love, well, I don't love it, but, well, I do love it, I suppose, but my passion for autoimmune came out of my daughter's diagnosis of juvenile arthritis when she was 2. She's been in remission for many, many years. So that's where my real interest out of gut health, genetics, and autoimmune has come from. And of course, maintaining optimal health. I'm in my 40s, I'm perimenopausal. I want to be making sure that I'm looking after myself. And as I learn all of these things, I'm able to share it with you, which is fantastic. I've supported hundreds of people around the world in regaining their gut and their overall health, energy, and confidence. I'm Australian. I am based in Australia. I live in Canberra, but I do work globally. And I've got many programs, but the couple that I'm going to share with you a bit later today is one called the 21-Day Energy Jumpstart, and also one called the Healthy Gut Formula. And if you know about SIBO, I am SIBO doctor approved. So today, look, we'll probably go for between 40 and 60 minutes. If you're listening to the recording, you can play it on double play or, a bit quicker. I don't say and well, not very often, so it should be a smooth sailing listening experience for you. So today, I'm going to cover with you why great gut health is essential for your overall optimal health, including some of the common symptoms of poor gut health, including what we call scientifically intestinal permeability. And you may have heard a leaky gut. They're the same thing. It's just intestinal permeability is what we talk about in the literature and the research. And by the end of our time together, you're going to have further insight on some of the things that you can work on with your gut health and be clear on the steps to take. So all diseases begin in the gut. You may have heard this saying. This is thousands of years old by Hippocrates, who was what we think the first doctor, the first practicing medical physician in Greece. And it was really interesting because the whole philosophy and the whole dialogue back then was we must work on the gut because that's the foundation of health. And it's really interesting, all these years later, this is where the science is really driving us back to. Your microbiome, your microbiota plays a very important role in your health. And if we think about what you've got and what's going on in there, it's really like a garden. And if you look at this gorgeous Japanese garden, we've got good plants, we've got good bacteria, we've got yeast. And what they do is they keep the weeds, they keep the bad bacteria under control. And you can see with this absolutely gorgeous garden, the weeds are never gone. They're always there, but they're under control. And that's what we want in your gut. And then the other thing about, how the gut can be similar to a garden, I know this is a very simplistic analogy, but it makes sense, is we have to give it plant seeds. So we have to feed it. And with our bodies, we feed it with probiotics and we feed it, the seeds are probiotics, and then we feed it with prebiotics. And they're the foods, and good examples of prebiotic foods are things like sauerkraut, are like bananas that have a bit of green on them. So not eating your bananas when they're all black and spotty, if you can eat them with a bit of green on it, it's got prebiotic food. Resistant starch is what it is. And so it escapes your digestion and it feeds the good gut bugs. And that's what we've got to look at. We've got to go, okay, within our gut, there's always going to be opportunistic bugs, some of the weeds, but we've just got to make sure that we're keeping it under control. Antibiotics and prebiotics. So a lot of people I work with have had a lot of antibiotics, either as a child or, later in life. And the thing is that the body actually can't differentiate between what's bad. When these antibiotics are coming in, it can tackle the bad, but it can also tackle the good. And that's a problem. So if we're having antibiotics are really important and we really need them. But if we're not able to then bring back in those seeds, bring in the good bacteria back into our gut, sometimes we find an imbalance. The optimal gut health. So, when we've got good gut health, our body's in good working order. We're able to absorb the nutrients from our food. Our small intestine and our large colon, our stomach, all the organs are working optimally. And there's evidence to say that when everything is working in, the order that it should be, there's links with our gut health and our immune health and our mood and our mental health, and the list goes on. Skin is a big one, hormones are a big one, and there's science around autoimmune diseases and cancer as well. And I love this quote from Mark Hyman where he says, the key to creating great health is figuring out the cause of the problem and then providing the right conditions for the body and the soul to thrive. And when we're talking about the gut health, it's not always just about bringing in the seeds or bringing in the food, the pre and the probiotics. Sometimes it is more. It's about saying, okay, well, what's going on in your body in totality? And for some of us, we got to stop to be honest with ourselves. And this is where I'm going to take you through this little quiz today to say, am I eating well? Food first. Am I doing the right things to bring in nutrition into my body? And in functional medicine, what we often have to stop and do first things first is what's the non-negotiables? So the non-negotiables are the fast foods, the processed foods, excessive amounts of alcohol, excessive amounts of bad fats. Those kinds of things are what we call non-negotiables. If you have poor health, then they're the things that we really have to work on first. And I will take you through a bit of a list today where you can be honest with yourself and go, well, am I slipping into a bit of a habit where I'm having way too much of that? For some people, it is certain food groups. So it might be gluten, it might be dairy, it might be, sugar was one I should have mentioned earlier. Excess sugar is a non-negotiable as well. It's going to depend on every different person, but starting off with the processed fast foods, the sugars, excess alcohol is a really good place to start. With functional medicine, once we've really worked through that first layer, it's then saying, okay, within your body, how do we support you to go from deficiency to sufficiency in not only your minerals and your vitamins and your macronutrients that you're eating, but also your ability to absorb them. And again, it comes back to if you've got great gut health and if your small intestine's working optimally and your organs are producing, acid and enzymes, then your absorption is going to be optimal. So that's a good thing. Where we go next is then look at what we call dismantling dysfunction. So if we know we've got the first 2 points, quite right, or we're working on those, then what we do is we stop to go, okay, well, where do we need to do further work? And usually, a good place to look is the gut to say, okay, what's going on in there? Do you have excessive exposure to toxins? What's happening in your environment? Is there mold? What's happening with your hormones? Are they out of whack? What's happening with your sleep? Are you struggling to get to sleep? Are you struggling to stay asleep? And then also, one of my favorite topics, your genetics. So what's your blueprint of your genes and how is that being influenced by some of these things? So I thought I'd just share that with you so you understand when I say I'm a functional medicine nutritionist, it's not just about here's a meal plan, go away and eat these foods. It's about stopping to go, okay, what's happening for you in your body? And then, sometimes we use supplements, but we definitely do take a food first approach to go, okay, how can we best build you up? And, I think the benefit of and why I get success with people is I use my brain. I say, okay, what is going on in all the different systems of the body for you to have certain symptoms? Because often people have navigated life. I had a client today and she's in her 70s. She's been struggling her whole life with certain symptoms. And she's never had anyone to stop to say, okay, well, these symptoms could be interlinked and this is how. So yeah, again, using the brain sometimes can be really, really helpful. And also having the power of having someone tell me their story and being able to stop to say it and ask the questions and ask the family history helps join dots. So with regards to gut, these are the common symptoms I see. Constipation. I'd say I see constipation more than diarrhea. I do see constipation and alternating diarrhea. And I do see some people with diarrhea chronically, but usually it's constipation, upset stomach, gas, wind, bloating, heartburn, reflux. They're very common. So you may be dealing with this going, oh yeah, I've got that, but everyone's got that. Well, actually, I don't. I used to, but I don't now. I had someone say to me, it was a couple of weeks ago in clinic, she said, oh, but my grandmother said that you should pass wind every day. I was like, well, no, you shouldn't. It means you're fermenting. you got bacteria in there that's producing gases. No, you shouldn't, because then those gases upset the epithelial lining of your digestive tract. No, that's not normal. So she had spent her whole life thinking, well, grandma had said it was normal. It was normal. It's not. So I want you to just keep track as we're going through to go, okay, what are you tolerating? I was tolerating constipation, I was tolerating bloating, and I was tolerating upset stomach a lot for a long time before, I started working on my gut. Other things, joint pain. And I see this a lot, joint pain and muscle pain. And people go, well, how is that related? And I'll tell you in a minute. Autoimmune conditions, so rheumatoid arthritis, juvenile idiopathic arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, ankylosing spondylitis, type 1 diabetes, celiac disease. They're all autoimmune conditions. And I'll share with you in a minute how it's linked to the gut, skin, acne, eczema, rosacea, big time. We know that there's things going on with the gut. What about this list? Sugar cravings, weight changes, sleep disturbances. Like I said, struggling to get to sleep, restless, waking up through the night, waking up exhausted, fatigue, feeling like in the afternoon you have to have a nap, mood fluctuations, PMS, even sore breasts with PMS symptoms. It's a sign of poor gut health, and hormonal imbalances. So if you're starting to tick a few of these off, then, I think this workshop's going to be really good for you. Food intolerances, sensitivities, allergies, and definitely celiac disease, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis. If you've got one of those conditions and you're not feeling great, even though you're avoiding gluten, you're avoiding the inflammatory foods, then we probably need to have a look to go what's going on in your gut. And I love this diagram. I've got the reference down here before if you want to look it up. But you may have heard of the gut-brain axis. It's getting more and more airtime in mainstream media. And, what are we talking about there? So we're talking about microbiota alterations, so changes in our gut based on what we're eating, how much we're eating, the seeds, the prebiotics, the probiotics, the drugs that we're taking, the stress that we're influenced by, toxins, etc. All of that can influence our gut brain. And there's lots of research coming out now saying our gut can influence and has links with schizophrenia, mood disorders, ASD, ADHD, Parkinson's, even Alzheimer's and obesity. There's literature, and there's a lot of literature that's coming out post-COVID saying there's gut-lung axis. Particularly, we saw with COVID, it's a real insult to the gut. So if you've had COVID, then your gut intestinal lining is probably worn down a bit, because the big insult is to that mucosal lining. 80% of our immune system is in our gut. I never knew that until I qualified. It's called the gut-associated lymphoid tissue. So it makes sense to me that this gut-lung axis is a thing, and then gut-bone axis. And we're seeing more and more that some people, when they've got poor gut health, they are unfortunately suffering with osteopenia, even at young ages. People, your bone density, your maximum bone density happens up to the age of 33. So if you've got children, we've got to make sure that we are doing everything to promote their bone density up to the age of 33, because from 33 onwards, it, kind of teeters and then it drops, especially post-menopause. So post-50 for women, bone mineral mass is something we really need to work on and focus on and have our eyes on, because it is a thing, it's a real thing. And I see it all the time. So osteoporosis, we do see this gut-bone axis. And like I said earlier, we're seeing more and more disorders like diabetes, cancer, kidney disease, and cardiovascular diseases as well. So, if that's not reason to take good care of your gut, I don't know what is. I live and breathe this, and I do take very good care of my gut, and I'll tell you why in a bit. So what is leaky gut? You may have heard of it, and basically, it means that there's substances that are leaking through. So if you think about when you eat, it goes in your mouth, and you're kind of hollow, like a donut, really. The inside of you goes in here, comes out the other end. The waste comes out the other end, that is. So what happens is when you've got intestinal permeability, which is what we call it in the science, so when you've got this leaky gut, is when you're eating, things are going in, and then, through a whole lot of magical processes, we can absorb our nutrients. But we're not meant to have junctures in our gut which are big, which they're not, they're microscopic, that let things through. So the whole process is really well fine-tuned. And with leaky gut, what it basically means is there's a breakdown. So I'm going to share with you with this diagram. So on this side, symbiosis, this is a really healthy gut. So, you know, we've got some bugs and things going on the outside here. This is a lining of the gut in this diagram. This is a mucosal lining, this secretory IgA. And these are the tight junctions. These little, they look like two lines, black lines together. They're the tight junctions. So this gut is functioning really well. We've got our T cells here. We've got our B cells. So this is our immune response. Remember I said the immune is in the gut. This is looking good. Dysbiosis. So when we have dysbiosis, that's when we've got bad bugs, really. So opportunistic bugs, if we call it that. And you can see some here. You know, they're not in this picture, they're here. So these are the opportunistic bugs. We've got here things like Klebsiella. We've called them pathobionts. What's happening here is these pathobionts and probably the stress the person's under, maybe the food they're eating, maybe they're taking some medications for, you know, autoimmune conditions or other conditions they've got. It's wearing down. You see, it's wearing down this secretory IgA, this mucosal lining of the gut. And as a result, some of these tight junctions, this zonulin is what it's called, is disappearing. And then what's going to happen is as this gut becomes more unhealthy, they're going to get this intestinal permeability, so this leaky gut. And as you can see in this picture, there's none of these black lines. There's none of these tight junctions. And so these pathobionts can get into the bloodstream. And once they start getting into the bloodstream, what happens is these macrophages and your neutrophils, and you know what they're going to do is they're going to sound the alarm. So your body sounds the alarm and says, invader, invader, this little purple thing's an invader, attack. And so there's an inflammatory response. So if you've got IBD, typically that's what's going on. If you've got autoimmune, definitely what's going on is there's an autoimmune response where the body is going in literally to do what it needs to do. It's going in to mop up the mess. And as you can see from this diagram is we could go in and spend forever trying to sort out things from this side, but unless we work on healing and restoring gut health, we're not going to get too far. So we've got to work through for this person, you know, we've got to clear the pathobionts, we've got to restore the gut function, we've got to build up that mucosal lining, and we've got to heal the gut. We've got to fix that zonulin. If you have any questions as I'm going, feel free to either type them in the chat or unmute yourself. All right, I'm just going to move this screen. It's in my way. So the research is coming out all the time. So this was a really good paper that was talking about zonulin. So zonulin is an example of these tight junctions. So when we do a gut test and we see that zonulin's kind of like the zipper that undoes the tight junctions. So when we do a gut test and we see that there's a high amount of zonulin, we know that these tight junctions have been unzipped. So in this case, this person would have a high zonulin number. And what this piece of research is saying that zonulin is becoming a really important marker for us to understand with regards to not only inflammation and autoimmunity, but also cancer. which is incredibly fascinating and great if we can start to use it as information to really help in the early, prevention. That's why I'm doing it. Prevention, big time. Again, more studies on autoimmune, in general health. I won't go into all the studies. When we do a gut test, like I said, the zonulin undoes those tight junctions, undoes the zippers. And on this gut test, this person has high amount of zonulin. So they've got a high amount of what we call leaky gut. So anything over 70 on a GI map, which is a poop test, is high. What we're also looking on this test is the person's digestion. So steatocrit is the level of fat in their stool. So if your poo floats, then you probably have an elevated level of steatocrit. Your poo should sink. It should be a brown sausage that sinks with no food in it. So if you're deviating from that, then again, this test might be really helpful to say, okay, well, why? What's going on? Elastase 1 is an indication of the amount of enzymes that your pancreas is producing. This person's way too low, like 388, depending on their age. I'd love them over 750. So I'd be stopping to say, okay, well, why is it a bit low? You may recall a couple of minutes ago we spoke about PMS and sore breasts. I didn't mention endometriosis, but that's also a condition that's linked with gut health. And often we see this beta-glucuronidase is elevated. So if you do have PMS then and endo, then maybe, your beta-glucuronidase is up, and we've got to work through how we get that down. So beta-glucuronidase is, your liver goes through 2 phases of detox. And when we're trying to get rid of hormones, particularly estrogen for these conditions, beta-glucuronidase, once it's been through the second phase of detox, beta-glucuronidase in the gut basically undoes the estrogen that's been conjugated, and so it has to be recycled and basically reprocessed through the body. And so that's why women get the sore breasts. That's why they're having excess estrogen that's causing some of their endo symptoms, because they're not able to clear it so often. Not always, but often. So again, really interesting marker. When I spoke before around the 80% of the immune system is in the gut, that's this number we're looking at, the secretory IgA. So this person's not doing too bad. I will say most people I've seen, and I look at hundreds and hundreds of gut tests, most people are really, really low because, like I said, I think COVID and, just our environment and our lifestyle wears the gut lining down. Every now and again, I'll see it through the roof. And I was an example of that recently. Well, not recently, it was quite a few months ago now, where I had a gluten exposure. My cousin's celiac, I've got all the celiac genes. I've been tested for celiac quite a few times, but I can't eat enough to do the biopsy. I just feel so sick, and I get really severe fatigue and severe joint pain, and I get a rash, which is the typical celiac rash. And a couple of months ago, I got this little rash, and I went, oh, no, I've had an exposure. And I thought I'll just do the gut test, just out of interest to see. My secretory IgA was 5,000. My, what was the other market? My anti-gliadin was over 500. Which I've never seen a gut that bad, I'll be honest with you. And my zonulin was 400 and something. So I had very severe leaky gut from a crumb of gluten. So if you are celiac and you have been exposed to gluten, based on my experience, I think doing the gut test is really, really, really powerful. I had no gut symptoms, none. No bloating, no diarrhea, no constipation, nothing. I had severe fatigue, and I had sausage fingers, and I had the rash, which I was able to resolve a lot of the really acute symptoms quickly. And obviously the healing of a gut takes months. So I'm living and breathing it. Calprotectin. So if this number is really high, which I very rarely see, but sometimes I do, it means that there's white blood cell infiltration into the lining of the gut. So that's really quite serious. We've got to get, obviously, very professional gastroscopy type assessment of what's going on in there. So, this is just a different diagram, a different way of looking at it, where we have the healthy barrier, the lumen. We've got this outer mucosal layer where we call it the microbiota. Some people call it the microbiome. This is that secretory IgA level, that mucosal barrier. And then these are the, this one cell thick is basically what keeps what's in the inside of us to what's in our blood separate. One cell thick, amazing. And it's these tight junctions, like I said, which become really impaired. So as the mucosal lining wears down, and that's what I was saying I'm seeing a lot of lately, this becomes damaged, and then all of a sudden we see things where, people's zonulin creeps up, their secretory IgA is down, and then all of a sudden they got poor gut health. And when you've got ulcers, that's not a good thing. I have had clients with ulcers, and we can heal it, but obviously it takes quite a lot of work, and sometimes it does take pharmaceuticals as well. So dysbiosis, so that's where there's an imbalance of bacteria in the gut. So that's where the garden's messed up. And that's where there's two types. So we can have a type where there's an overgrowth of opportunistic bugs, and we can have a type of dysbiosis where you don't have enough good bugs. So here's an example of the GI map again, where we look at the good, normal keystone bacteria. So these are the bacteria that we want you to have in your gut at good levels. I see a lot of guts where there's no Akkermansia, there's no Faecalibacterium. And these are really, really important keystone species for gut health and immune health. You can't take probiotics for these guys. So it's about us understanding, are they there? Are they not there? Why are they not there? How does this play out with everything else that's going on for you? And how do we get them up? And we get them up with what we call functional foods. And functional foods are foods, there could be, a cherry, for instance, that has particular benefits in the body that we know does certain things. Like I said, the banana with a little bit of green on it is a functional food because we know it's a resistant starch and it feeds some of the good bugs. If you've got resistant weight loss, this can be a really helpful ratio to find out. So what we do know is firmicutes, so I call them firmicutes, love calories. So if your firmicutes number is high, maybe, and I see this a lot where people say, I'm trying everything. I'm exercising and I'm doing all the food, but I just can't shift the weight. Sometimes we can stop to go, okay, well, what is the firmicute and Bacteroides balance, and is the ratio good? Because that can sometimes tell us what's going on, and you don't want too many of the bugs which love the calories. Then when we start talking about the opportunistic bugs and things that we've got to work on, firstly, we look for pathogens. So look, very rarely do I see pathogens, but definitely if you've got C. diff or E. coli or salmonella or something like that, that's where we start. Sometimes, it's a referral to the doctor, particularly with some of these like salmonella. If that comes up on the test, it's a reportable pathogen. So, I had a client in Queensland and she got a call from Queensland Health before she got a call from me because the gut test company has to report on some of these. Not all of them. Salmonella is one. I'm not sure about the others. But yeah, it's a disclosable condition and it's very serious, right? Because we've got to work out where the hell this has come from, and has it come from a food outlet that, people are buying food from. So very rarely do I see these. H. pylori. So H. pylori is what we call a corkscrew bacteria, and it's in the stomach. So when we think about how our digestion works, chew, goes to the stomach. Stomach's like the food processor that whizzes everything up. And we want a good amount of acid in our stomach to help that food processor whiz everything up. When you got Helicobacter, it does reduce the stomach acid levels, and we see it. So, depending on what the levels are, we've got to try and work out what the best approach is. If it's in, within a range, then, there's really good probiotics that we can take that are really, really effective. If it's out of control, it may require an antibiotic. So we've just got to work through what does it look like? And, again, where's the best place to start? Then what we've got are the opportunistic bacteria. And so what we're trying to work through here is, how does this match with your symptoms? So some people will be carrying a heavy load of certain bugs, but they may not be symptomatic. Or if you're saying to me, I'm constipated, or I have diarrhea, what I'm looking for is, okay, what's out of balance, and where could that story, your symptoms, be playing out in here? If you've got autoimmune, what we do know is in the literature that these bacteria are known to trigger and sustain autoimmune disease. Particular, I see Klebsiella a lot in children as well, and Citrobacter. They are sticky. Yeah, that's not the scientific word, but they are sticky and tricky to get rid of, but it's not impossible, that's for sure. I see them shift often. And what we've got to try and do is get them within a good range. So, how you read these reports is you see, for this one, 3 zeros, you add 3 zeros. You see to the power 3, you add 3 zeros after. So should be less than 5,000. This person's got 4. So you add 4 zeros. So they've got 20,000. So instead of less than 5, they've got 20,000. That's pretty significant. Sometimes I see 2 million. We've got a big problem then. So, I feel like this person would be able to do some work and get them to shift reasonably quickly. We look for fungus and yeast, hardly ever see it. Viruses, hardly ever see it. And that's a real snapshot of the GI map. So we've got we understand the digestion, we understand the opportunistic bugs, but we're also understanding the good bugs as well, which is really important. And this is my quote. I made this up. So foods either fight or feed inflammation, and the trick is playing the what's going on in here game and working out what does what for you, because it's going to be different for everyone. Some foods for you may be great. You may be able to eat garlic. It's fantastic. It's really good for gut health. The person who I spoke to an hour ago can't eat it. It causes them really severe reflux. And what we've got to try and do is play that game to say, okay, well, what is going to help your genetics and also your overall health? Okay, so let's play a game. So this is out of 25. As I'm going through, I want you to be honest with yourself and say, okay, well, what could I upgrade? What could I focus on over the next month? If I was to do one of these things really well to improve my gut health, what one would it be? And like I said, there's 25, so you may walk away going, look, I got a big score, and I don't want you to do all of them. It's about what could you do really well consistently. So my nutrition tips for good gut health: lots of whole foods and fiber. So food is medicine, and I'm giving a talk on that next month, is not just eating salads. It's about how can we eat the best quality. So if you do have access to organic foods, then try and eat organic vegetables where you can. If you can't and it's out of your budget. Studies show that still eating vegetables from the supermarket have great influence on health. So don't let that trip you up, for sure. But if you can afford it and you do have access to it, like I do here in Canberra, there's a farmer's market, and it's way cheaper for me to buy my organic produce at the farmer's market than it is at the supermarket, and it's fantastic quality. I just have to get my backside out of bed on a Sunday morning to get there. Whatever works for you. What I would love you to do is focus on the rainbow of colours, to say, okay, each week, am I having all the colours? Am I having purple? Am I having orange? Am I having yellow? Am I having red? Am I having blue? Am I having white? So how I do that is I look in my basket and say, right, do I have the colours here? And then if the colours are there, I just assume when I get home and I'm making my meals that they're going to make their way into my stomach. We're aiming for 2 fists, your size fist. And if you've got kids, it's your little kids' size fist for them. 2 fists of fruit and 5 fists of veggies a day. Only 7% of people eat that. Okay, most people don't. So you can upgrade your health significantly by 2 fists of fruit and 5 fists of veggies. If you're struggling with that, I can help you with a meal plan. I've got lots of tips and tricks. I probably eat 7 fists. When I was really crook with my inflammation the other week, I went up to 9. I was like, right, I got to get this sorted. And within 3 days, my inflammation went down. But definitely 2 fists of veggie, 2 fists of fruit, 5 fists of veggies a day. Decrease highly processed foods. So what I'm talking about there are things in packets. So if you've got chips, if you've got biscuits, if you've got cakes, if you've got bread, trying to work through how you can start to reduce that. It will improve your health, because in those foods, there's a lot of fillers and starches and additives, and even in gluten-free products, even in organic gluten-free products, there's still a whole lot of junk. So what we're trying to do is fill our tummies up with foods that are as close to nature as possible. Decreasing sugar is a good thing. Alcohol, the research this year that is coming out is saying no alcohol. So I'm really sorry to break that news to you. Easy for me to say because I've been sober for 3 years. It was not that difficult to do. I just said I wanted to try an experiment. And then 3 months into my experiment, I felt so good. I've never looked back. So if you need help with that, let me know. It used to be, a couple of glasses of alcohol a day or a week, but now the research is saying none. And when we think about it, like, we sterilize hospital surgical equipment with alcohol. And I had a client ask me the other day, and she said, Vanessa, is there a reason that when I drink, my sinus pain goes right down and I'm like feeling so good and I'm not bloated? I was like, yeah, of course there is. It's killing your gut bugs, good and bad. And she was like, whoa. She was like, now that makes sense, because she was able to then correlate that to how she felt a few days after. So yeah, just park it. If now's the right time, you'll take action. But if it's not, then you can park it for later. Hydrate. I'd love you to have 1 or 2 glasses of water before breakfast. Great for your overall health, but most of us are not drinking enough. And how that impacts our health is sometimes our motility gets sluggish. So if you could have 2 glasses of water before breakfast, what that's going to do is bring a lot of hydration into your gut, and it's going to help you poo, which is really good. Consume fermented foods if you can tolerate them. So I'm talking about things like sauerkraut. I'm talking about things like miso. Kombucha, I would steer clear of the shop-based kombucha. It's full of sugar these days. Even the one in the health shops are not that great. If you're having kombucha, I'd really be discerning as to, what's in it. They need sugar in it to ferment it, but most of them are just like having a soft drink. So I would really stick to a little bit of sauerkraut or maybe a miso soup. So what I want you to do is just stop to go, okay, on this list of 5 things, how did I rank? Do I need to make upgrades in any of these areas? And which one would be your priority? Eating tips for gut health. So it's really important that when we're eating, we're present with our food and we're not distracted by our computer or our phone or the TV, because what happens then is our brain doesn't know what it's doing. So it doesn't know if I'm eating or if I'm engrossed in this drama, on the news or work or whatever. So what I want you to do is be really present with your food and thinking about it, feeling it, chewing really, really well, sitting straight, eating slowly, and if possible, not eating right before bed. So eating 3 or 4 hours before you go to sleep. And if you can, 1 hour upon waking, because if you do those 2 things, you're really going to help your insulin and your cortisol, which are 2 really important hormones. Stress tips for gut health. So just gentle exercise. If you've got young kids, it might be playing in the garden with them, or it might be a gentle walk. For me, I used to be big into running. I don't do that anymore. I do a lot of body weight work at home. That works for me. You've got to find something that works for you that's just gentle, easy, depending on your age and stage. Going full on extreme exercise might not be the right thing for you. You've got to work out what suits your body best. Deep breathing. So every morning I put hands on the tummy and I do 5 of those, and I anchor on a high vibration positive word. Gets the vagus nerve going. So the vagus nerve's the biggest nerve in the spine that is like the electrical current to your digestion. And just doing those 5 deep breaths in and out, doesn't seem like much, it only takes 20 seconds, is really, really powerful for my gut health. If you can get space to meditate, I'm not talking 20 minutes, an hour. It might just be, listening to the Calm app on your phone before you go to bed, or listening to some humming bowls or something like that. Again, it works on that vagus nerve. And that vagus nerve is really important for good gut health. We call it vagal tone. Humming, singing, gargling, cold showers, also great for vagal tone. And as a result, gut health. Another thing that is great that people don't realize is vitamin D. So getting sun-safe sunshine. So 10 minutes or so before 10 a.m. can really, really positively impact your gut as well. So again, I'll give you a minute to stop to go, okay, how many of these things could I work on? I don't want you to come up with a huge shopping list. Again, it's going to come back to priority. What's 1 or 2 things that you can do really well for a month to see what the impact is? Toxins. So remember, we've got all these things. We absorb toxins through our skin. We're taking them in through our nose, through our mouth when we're eating and drinking. And they impact our microbiome. So, if you've got makeup, moisturizers, cleaning products, perfume, scented candles, things around your home which are causing a toxin buildup in your body, then it will impact your gut. So trying to get natural products are definitely worth it. And especially if you've got young kids, I think it's really important, because young kids are faced with a lot of insults these days. And if we can reduce the toxic load in the home, then it's really going to set them up for success, because kids don't have sophisticated detox processes like we do. Theirs is still maturing. Don't use plastic water bottles, containers, non-stick cookware, Teflon, all of that. The phytoestrogens, or not the xenoestrogens it's called, that it can create, again, really impacts your gut. Clean air, my plant's not looking that great. He broke. Some of the stems died, so I had to get rid of them. But you can see new ones growing. But having plants in your home can help detox the air. Having doors open, even in winter. So if you can possibly, when you go out during the day, open the doors, let the fresh air circulate. Definitely making sure that there's no mold. And if there is, removing it, not cleaning it, because cleaning it doesn't get rid of it. If there's mold in the walls, you got to remove the sheets. You got to remove what's behind there to get rid of the mold. And then you got to get the mold out of your body, because the mold will then impact your gut as well. And if you got worms or infections. So again, if you got little kids, you probably want to be worming them regularly. And then sleep tips. Prioritize your sleep. If you have to, set a sleep alarm. Your gut repairs itself. You do your deepest healing when you're asleep. It helps lower your stress hormone, your cortisol. If you need to have a bedtime alarm, that's basically what I do. My bedtime alarm's coming up, 9 o'clock, where I know that's the time I have to start to get ready to sleep. So then I'll be asleep by 10. What's your hygiene? What's your sleep hygiene? For me, I love having a shower. It's hot, it's relaxing. I get to clean my face. I get to put on, my nice pajamas. I read usually a book with my daughter. And you got to do the things that are going to relax you. Not being on this maybe for an hour before bed. For some people, it's the blue light. It can be too much for them. Definitely trying to be asleep by 10:30, because after 10:30, your cortisol does rise, and that's what keeps you awake. So a lot of people say, I'm a night owl. Well, it's not really true. It's just that they're riding the cortisol wave, which long term, the metabolic health will suffer. So definitely, if you want to keep yourself really healthy, trying to be asleep by 10:30 is a really good thing to do. And the same if you've got kids, trying to get your kids and your teenagers asleep by then. And if you're waking through the night, try and keep note of the times you're waking. So if you're waking between 2 and 4, that can be a sign that your liver's going into a detox. And so what we want to be doing is noting that down, so we can say, okay, well, what does this tell us about what's happening in your body, especially if it's a cycle, if it's something that you're noticing over and over. So how did you score? Does anyone want to share in the chat how they scored on how many things, they could work on? And what's the one thing that you really want to focus on over the next month that's going to help shift the dial with your health and with your gut health? So I know we covered a lot. 25 things is a lot, and I don't expect you to have to do all of those. What do you think? What's the number one thing you want to work on? I'm going to go back and let's just go scroll through. For me, I do a lot of this because this is my journey that I've been working on. For me, it's going to be the fermented foods. That's dropped off. Good. And so you're saying 2 fruit and 5 veg each day. Great. And a daily walk before 10, and slowing down when we're eating food. And, often we swallow chunks. And I find as a mum, I swallow chunks because I'm like, try not to be standing when you eat. definitely don't walk and eat, because if you're walking and eating, your body definitely doesn't know what's going on. And try to chew, it's called masticate, until it's like baby food, and then swallow. I got into that habit as a young mum. I wasn't young, I was an old mum, but of a young kid, where I was swallowing just chunks of food. I was like, just get it in. So I think, they're great things. Working on the 2 fruit and 5 veg, daily walk before 10, and slowing down when eating. If you do those things really consistently, I think you're going to get some good benefits. And I'm going to do the sauerkraut because it's in the fridge. I just haven't been having it. So I'm actually really looking forward to that. I love this quote. It's remarkable what your body will do when you stop fighting it. So when you start giving it what it needs, give it the space, give it the walk, give it the veggies and the fruit, the fermented foods, all the things that we're going to do, the chewing, it's going to repay us. So imagine, you regain your gut health, you feel better, you don't have to worry about what to wear. And for some people, they have to worry about where the closest toilet is, and that's really stressful. Imagine having great energy through the day, stable mood. And if you want to go down the path of learning what's going on in there by doing a gut test and learning the root causes, I won't go through this in detail. If you want to learn more about digestion, in my workshop called Is it IBS, SIBO, EMO, EFO, or all of the above or something else, I cover this in quite a lot of detail around how your digestion works. So if that's something you want to learn about, then I really suggest you go to that workshop, and you can just fast forward to that bit. But essentially it starts in your brain. So it starts in your brain and it ends in your anus. And your GI tract is made up of so many different organs. So I think if you're working someone around gut health, you want to know that they know and that they're thinking about everything. They're thinking about not only your mouth and your esophagus and your stomach and your small intestine, your large colon, your liver, your gallbladder, your pancreas, all of it. What is going on at the various stages of what you're eating, and how you're absorbing it, and how you're eliminating the toxins. So many people just talk about just this, the large colon, and it's way, way, way more than that. I've got a client at the moment who is getting teeth implants because a lot of her gut things we think might be because she's not able to chew well. She's seen lots of people. No one really thought about that or picked up on that. That's an example. Another example is, if you got food in your poo. If you look at your poo and there's undigested food, we start going, okay, well, let's look upstream. Let's look as high up as the stomach, the food processor. And you go, well, it's got to go through the stomach to the small intestine to the large colon. Surely it should be the large colon. No, often it's the stomach with Helicobacter and not enough stomach acid. So I think that's really, really important. If you're investing time, if you're investing money with a health professional, that you've got someone who really thinks holistically about your digestion. And like I said, check out that video because I go in for probably, I'd say 5 or 10 minutes, a lot around digestion. It's really, really helpful. So your gut health is super, super important. It keeps you healthy. It keeps you happy. If you don't have autoimmune, it keeps you, away from that. If you do have autoimmune, it can keep you in good shape. It's responsible for keeping your body working optimally. It absorbs your nutrients. It absorbs your minerals. You can heal your gut. You can regain great gut health and overall health. And like I said a bit earlier, and I love that you said, the 2 and the 5 that you're going to do, because taking a food first approach is where it's at. I started off by sharing, I love nutrigenomics. I love saying, okay, what is my genetic blueprint You know, some of my clients do it where they say, what are my genes? I want to know what they are. So I want to learn how I can influence them. But at the end of the day, your genetic background is, you know, say this circle, and you got your environmental exposures, and nutrition is the real thing that plays the difference. And nutrition is the thing that turns your genetic switches on and off. We know some of the things that turn the genes on: fast food, junk food, fatty foods, sugar, alcohol, etc., toxins. And we know that food can be incredibly powerful in turning certain genes, you know, off and on. Some need to be on, some need to be off. So I love what you said, that you're going to focus on that today. So today, what we've covered is, hopefully you've learnt that great gut health really is super important. If this has been useful, feel free to share the link of the video with, you know, friends, family, whoever, because it really is important. Gut health is essential to your optimal overall health. And intestinal permeability, leaky gut, it is very common. And if you know, you think you might got it, we've got to fix it. We've got to heal your gut. And hopefully you've got some tips on where to go from here. What I will share is, some people find eating a lot of veggies and implementing those 25 things a bit overwhelming. And for you, you may say, look, yeah, I am keen on trying a functional medicine nutrition approach. You may be fed up. There might be time. And if you are, you know, you're ready to take action, you want to learn the root causes, you want to try a new approach, you have to be committed to being persistent and consistent. So you don't have to do things to the letter of the law. I've had a client recently who got tremendous results. She had very severe ulcerative colitis. And she didn't do everything letter of the law. She said to me, I'm doing about 50% of what you've recommended as far as supplements and food-based changes and lifestyle changes. She still got tremendous results because she was still committed to being consistent. It was just at a lesser percentage, which is absolutely fine. So I suppose it's about working through how this fits with you. So there's two different ways to get started. There's a gentle detox, which is 21 days. And this is really, really good if you say, look, yeah, I probably need to eat more veggies, and I probably need some help in dropping some of the alcohol and dropping some of the coffee and dropping some of the sugar and dropping some of the processed food. I'm with you for 21 days. I take you through it. I do it myself. I do this 4 times a year. I love it. I've done it lots of times because it feels good, you know, and every time I do it, I'm peeling back the layers of the onion. My detox is getting deeper and deeper. And what we do is, for 21 days, I support you. You cook your meals at home. We're in a kind of group forum where I give you you get an ebook, which takes you through the whole detox process. You get the recipes. We show up in the group every day if you want, and you can share with me how you're feeling, what you're eating, what you're up to. You don't have to if you don't want to. Some people don't. And then if you want to, we have a weekly coaching clinic where I'd let you know what the next week's going to look like, how to prepare for it, how to show up, and how people feel. Well, you can go onto my website and see the testimonials. People say it's transformational. They say they are glowing, their skin's glowing, that they got more energy, they're sleeping better than ever, their constipation goes, their bloating reduces, their moods improve, their joint pain disappears. They're the main things. You know, I had a lady who was in her 70s or 80s who said she had not been depressed for like 50 years or something. And she was like, I did this and then my depression lifted, which there is research on the gut and mood, as we spoke about. What else do I hear and see? They're the main things. Yeah, they're the main things. And then what happens is, most of the time people come out of that going, I'm going to make changes because I feel good. You know, I know the things that work for my body now. It is okay postpartum. If you're breastfeeding, what I do is I make sure you're having extra calories. So I have had a lady, her testimonials on my website, who was breastfeeding and postpartum, and she said it was the best thing she could have done to get herself in the mindset of having this little one, because she was able to really shift some habits. So that's where that program is. It's a great starting point. If you've got chronic gut issues, and you say, look, I don't know if a detox is it. I want to do the gut test. I want to get really specific for me. I want to know exactly what's going on. I want to work with you, Vanessa, one-on-one. That's completely fine. You know, I love doing that too. It's more around a 4-month gut restoration program. So that's where you and I have an hour consultation. I pick your brain like no one's ever asked you questions before around your health history, your family history, where I'm joining dots and I'm trying to work out where the best first thing to do is for you, and whether or not it's we look at the stomach, the small intestine, the large colon, or is it other things that we need to work on. So that's more of a individual focused, whereas the Jumpstart is definitely a group based focus. So the Jumpstart, it's every season. So the next season coming up, because I'm recording this in August, the next season coming up is spring. And then the next one after that will be summer, autumn, winter, and the cycle goes on. So, if this is something you're interested in, what you've got to do is kind of have a look on the website, check when the next one's coming up, and work through if that timing's going to work for you. It's 3 weeks. The heavy lifting, like the really focus on the detox, is 2 weeks. In the 3rd week, we start reintroducing foods. So if you look at it and you go, 3 weeks, I can't do 3 weeks, it's really 2. Plus, then we start reintroducing. So that can be an option. It's $297 Australian dollars. If you pay by PayPal, as you know, PayPal now has the 4Pay, so that's an option for you. And again, if it doesn't work for you this spring, you can wait and join us in the next one. That's always an option. You get a detailed guide, so it's an ebook, it's comprehensive. You will use this for years to come. And I've had lots of clients who said, look, I just now do the detox on my own once a year because it's so comprehensive and they've got it all there. In saying that, I do have some clients who come back and do it because they like the support I give them. Accountability is the word that they use. We have weekly live group coaching clinics. And like I said, that's really where I share with you what's going to happen in the next phase, what to expect. I answer your questions. I'm your cheer squad. I'm there to motivate you. I'm there to help you be really successful in the program. So I've found that those coaching clinics are really, really powerful. You get recipes, you get menu plan. There are no one-on-one consultations. So it's all group-based setting. No bio-individual protocol. Like I said, it's all group-based and no functional testing. Whereas the Healthy Gut Formula, you can start tomorrow if I've got a booking available. But you can definitely join the program and you get the first video, and then what we've got to do is book in your first appointment, which we may be able to get you in next week. You just have to check my schedule and message me. And if you can't get in, I'll try and squeeze you in. The commitment is 12 weeks. You do have access to the program for up to a year. So in the program, you do get videos. So you can come back to the videos for up to a year. It is $9.97, which includes, you do get a detailed guide. You do get the 12 lessons, which are recorded, which are weekly, and you do get recipes and a menu plan that are for you. So it's not a general thing. It's, okay, what do we need for you? Do you have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth? Do you have reflux? Do you have, what's going on for you? Do you have leaky gut? You're going to get the recipes for you. They're not, general. You may be vegetarian, you may not be, you may not like onion, whatever. We'll create them based on that. the real value is you do get the one-on-one consultations with me. So you get 4 of those that we use. We do 1 a month. And then if you need more after that, you just add them on. So it's not an issue. You just add on, consultation by consultation after that if we need it. You get a bio-individual protocol. So based on all the conversations we have and any functional testing we run, I create you a plan that is for you. And functional testing's not included, like poo test and urine test and hair test and whatever test, but it can be done at an additional cost, and I will analyze it for you as part of the consultations. So, 2 quite different ways of working. Some people get such tremendous results out of just the Jumpstart. I had a lady who had been constipated for a long time, and she was on the fence about what approach to take. She was like, do I do the gut test? Don't I? And what it really came back to was she came back to me and said, Vanessa, I know I can do better with my eating. And I was like, well, let's do the eating. Let's do food first. And it was, fantastic. Constipation went. I messaged her the other day and she's like, yep, still fantastic. So, if you think that's for you and you think, yep, no, I could do with a bit of a kickstart, or as I call it, an energy jump start, then that might be for you. But if you know you're eating really well, you're eating quite clean, you're doing all the things, but something's still not quite right, then the healthy gut formula is probably the way to go. So that is it. To learn more, jump on the website. You can register for both. You just jump on and you can see and you can book it in. Before I finish off today, are there any questions? Give you a second in case you're typing. I'd really encourage you to follow the YouTube. I'm doing more and more of these workshops. If you're on Instagram, I'm trying to get better at it. I'm not the greatest, but I'm trying. And Facebook as well. So if you're on any of those social mediums, just follow me there and then you most will certainly get the update. All right, so no questions. So that's it for tonight. So thank you for joining. And like I said, if you want to know more, just reach out to me with any questions. And if in doubt, you can DM me on the social channels. That's probably the easiest way. And I'd love to see you in one of the programs if you need it. But I'm hopeful that tonight you've learnt some things. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.